All right, let's jump right in.
Sounds good.
Today, we're taking a deep dive into the world of Xi Jinping's thinking.
Fascinating stuff.
It's about the ideology that's shaping China's future. And honestly,
Right.
it's way more interesting than your typical political science lecture.
Oh, absolutely. It's far more nuanced than that.
Okay.
We're going to explore how Xi Jinping's ideas have actually taken shape.
Yeah.
How they're impacting Chinese society, the economy, and what these changes mean
Yeah.
for the rest of us, for the rest of the world.
Our guide for this is Kevin Rudd,
Oh, yeah.
former Australian Prime Minister, fluent Mandarin speaker,
Wow.
and the author
Progressive.
not only of the book, The Avoidable War, but also
Right.
a brand new doctoral thesis
Really dug deep.
on Xi Jinping's ideology.
It's years of work.
Talk about dedication.
Yeah, he's really immersed himself in all of Xi's writings and speeches,
Yeah.
giving us this unparalleled access
Unbelievable.
to how the paramount leader thinks and how those thoughts are, translating into actual policies.
Right, yeah.
And those policies affect us all.
So where do we even begin with all this?
Well,
Let's start with Xi Jinping's ideological roots.
all right.
Because it's not just your average communist playbook, is it?
You're absolutely right.
No.
What I find fascinating is that Xi Jinping's worldview draws from both ancient Chinese
Wow.
political philosophy and modern Marxist-Leninist thought.
So it's a real blend.
It's a blend.
Yeah.
It's creating this, unique mix that's driving China's current trajectory.
I've heard about this concept of Tianxia,
Yes.
all under heaven.
Yeah,
Is that part of this ancient philosophical influence?
precisely.
Oh, wow.
Tianxia is this ancient Chinese worldview that placed the emperor
At the center.
at the center of the universe. And
Yeah.
it seems that Xi Jinping
Yeah.
is drawing inspiration from this concept to
Yeah.
define China's role
Interesting.
in the world today.
So is he envisioning China as the new center of global affairs?
Exactly.
Like a leader, not a follower?
But it's not just about
Right.
reclaiming some, historical
Yeah.
position of dominance.
Right.
Xi Jinping truly believes
Yeah.
in China's inherent superiority
Wow.
and its destiny to lead the world.
Okay.
Now, on top of that, you layer his strong belief in Marxism,
Okay.
even more so than his predecessors.
So we've got this mix of ancient imperial thinking.
It's fascinating.
Yeah. And a firm commitment
Yes.
to Marxist ideology.
Yes.
What does that look like in practice?
Well, one key area
Yeah.
where this plays out is in Xi's view of the West.
Okay.
He sees the West as locked in an ideological war against China,
Oh, wow.
which is a significant departure
Yeah.
from previous Chinese leaders.
That's a pretty serious accusation.
It is.
Why does he believe that?
Well, she points to a range of factors,
Oh.
from criticism of China's human rights record
Right.
to what he sees as attempts to contain China's
Go.
economic and military rise.
So that kind of fuels this more assertive foreign policy we're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, this belief fuels China's more assertive foreign policy.
Yeah.
Things like the growing military presence in the South China Sea,
Yeah.
increasing pressure on Taiwan.
Okay, so we can kind of see how that explains
Yeah.
China's actions on the world stage.
Yeah.
But what about within China itself?
Well,
How is this ideology shaping Chinese society?
I think one of the most significant consequences of this
Yeah.
has been the dramatic increase in the Communist Party's control over all aspects of Chinese society.
Wow.
I mean, we're talking tighter control over media,
Right.
universities, religion, NGOs,
Wow.
even the private sector.
It sounds like nothing is beyond the party's reach.
Pretty much.
I've heard about this document number 9,
Yes.
released back in 2013.
2013.
Was that a turning point in this crackdown on dissent?
Absolutely. Document number 9 was basically the party laying out their line in the sand.
Yeah.
They explicitly warned against promoting Western values.
Okay.
Like, democracy, human rights.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it signaled a clear shift towards tighter ideological control.
So what did that look like in practice?
Well, you saw a crackdown on dissent across the board. Websites were blocked.
Right.
Activists were arrested. Universities faced greater scrutiny.
So he was sending a very clear message.
Very clear message.
The party would not tolerate any challenge
No.
to its authority.
Exactly.
So it sounds like he's really tightening his grip on power,
Yeah.
using ideology to justify it.
Yeah.
But how does all this mesh with the economy?
Right.
China's economic growth has been phenomenal
They had
over the past few decades.
phenomenal.
Can that continue with such strict control?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it gets to the heart of a fascinating tension within Xi Jinping's ideology.
Okay.
On the one hand, he emphasizes common prosperity, a shift away from solely market-driven
Right.
reforms of the past
Okay.
towards, a more equitable
Yeah.
distribution of wealth.
So is he talking about raising taxes for the wealthy or expanding social welfare programs?
It's a bit of a mixed bag,
Yeah.
and that's where the tension lies.
Okay.
While there have been some moves towards
Yeah.
social safety net improvements
Right.
and poverty alleviation,
Right.
there's also been a crackdown on certain industries and wealthy individuals seen as accumulating wealth too quickly
Interesting.
or outside the party's control.
But there's a lot of uncertainty
There's a lot of uncertainty,
in the private sector.
especially in the private sector.
So it seems like he's trying to balance this rapid economic growth
Yeah.
with a more socialist vision
Oh,
of equality.
exactly.
And it's causing friction.
It is causing friction.
And this friction is also evident in the more prominent role
Absolutely.
given to state-owned enterprises under Xi Jinping.
Yes. SOE.
So it's a clear signal that the party wants a greater hand
Greater
in managing the economy,
Yes.
potentially at the expense of the private sector.
Yes.
And then there's this concept I've heard about,
Okay.
the dual circulation economy,
Yes.
where China becomes more self-reliant,
Yeah.
less dependent on the West.
Right.
Is that even realistic in today's world?
It's an incredibly ambitious goal.
Yeah.
Many analysts are quite skeptical.
Yeah.
The idea is that China will focus on boosting domestic consumption,
Right.
technological self-sufficiency,
Okay.
reducing its reliance on foreign markets and technology.
But how can they achieve that when so much of their economy
Right.
is integrated into global supply chains?
That's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
This push for self-reliance
Yeah.
could have major implications for global trade and
Okay.
geopolitics.
Because it raises questions about whether China is really committed to globalization.
Huge questions.
Yeah.
Or whether it's charting a course towards a more isolated, potentially protectionist future.
Okay, so we're seeing how this ideology is playing out,
Yeah,
both domestically and internationally.
absolutely.
But how did he get to this point?
Well,
What shaped his thinking?
to understand Xi Jinping's worldview,
Yeah.
we need to go back
Sure.
to his formative years.
Okay.
He was born in 1953,
Okay.
just a few years after the founding of the People's Republic of China.
Right.
His father, Xi Jinping,
Yeah.
was a prominent Communist Party official
Okay.
who played a key role
Right.
in the Chinese Revolution.
So he grew up surrounded by
Oh, yeah.
these ideals of communism,
Very much so.
revolution.
Yes.
But his father was purged during the Cultural Revolution.
He was.
How did that impact him?
It's impossible to know for sure, but
Yeah.
many analysts believe that this experience had a profound impact on Xi Jinping's worldview.
Right.
It likely instilled in him a deep distrust
Okay.
of political instability
Okay.
and a strong belief in the need for...
Strong leadership and ideological control.
It sounds like a pretty traumatic experience.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Seeing your father, a high-ranking party official,
Yeah.
suddenly denounced and removed from power.
Yeah, and this was during a period of...
Immense upheaval and violence in China.
Yeah.
Millions of people persecuted.
Yeah.
The country was on the brink of chaos.
That sounds like it.
It was. This
Well,
experience likely convinced Xi Jinping that stability and order were paramount,
Yeah,
even if it meant
right.
sacrificing individual freedoms.
So he learned a harsh lesson about the fragility of power
He did.
and the importance of maintaining control.
Yes. And this lesson has shaped his approach to governing China.
Right,
He sees any form of dissent as a threat to stability
right.
and has taken extraordinary measures to suppress it.
And he's also placed a huge emphasis on
Absolutely.
ideological purity
Yes.
within the party, reviving the concept of
Rectification campaign.
rectification campaigns. What are those? They're mass movements aimed at
Are you?
purging dissent
Okay.
and enforcing ideological conformity within the party.
Got it.
These campaigns were a hallmark of Mao Zedong's era,
Yeah.
and their revival under Xi Jinping has raised concerns
Yeah.
about a return to the repressive tactics.
It sounds like a chilling echo of a very dark chapter in Chinese history.
It certainly is.
It highlights the extent to which Xi Jinping is willing to go
Yes.
to ensure the party's dominance
Yes.
and the continuation of his vision for China.
His vision.
So he's drawing from both
Yes.
ancient Chinese philosophy
Yes.
and the lessons of China's turbulent past
Exactly.
to shape his ideology and his rule.
It's a fascinating combination.
But how sustainable is this approach?
Well,
Can China really achieve these ambitious goals
that's the question.
while also tightening control and
Exactly.
suppressing dissent?
That's what we're going to explore further
Okay.
as we continue our deep dive into the world of Xi Jinping's thinking.
Great. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Sounds good. A question with no easy answers, really, but one thing's for sure, understanding Xi Jinping's ideology is essential for navigating, this increasingly complex relationship between China and the rest of the world.
So we need to grasp his worldview
We do.
if we want to understand where China's heading
I think so.
and how to avoid potential conflicts.
Precisely because if we misinterpret his motivations or dismiss his ideology as just rhetoric, we risk making some serious miscalculations.
Right. And how does this ideology actually impact people's lives in China? I mean, are they feeling the effects of this shift towards tighter control?
Oh, absolutely. The reassertion of party control, is shaping everything from what people can read and watch to the jobs that are available to them. The party's also pushing this strong nationalist message, emphasizing China's glorious history and its destiny to lead the world.
It sounds a bit like a return to the propaganda of the Mao era, but does it resonate with people? Are they buying into this narrative?
It's interesting because this nationalist sentiment doesn't seem to be just top down. There's a genuine sense of pride among many Chinese people, in their country's achievements and its growing global influence.
So it's a combination of both party messaging and a genuine sense of national pride. That's a potent mix,
It is.
especially when it comes to silencing dissent.
Right. It becomes very difficult to criticize the government or express, alternative viewpoints when it's framed as being unpatriotic or undermining China's rise.
So Xi Jinping is very skillfully using this combination of ideology and nationalism
Oh, yeah.
to solidify his power.
Absolutely.
But it can't all be smooth sailing, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the potential challenges to his vision?
Well, there are definitely some significant headwinds. China's facing a slowing economy, a shrinking workforce due to demographic changes, and there's growing pushback from other countries, concerned about China's assertive foreign policy.
Those are some serious challenges.
Yeah.
Can he really achieve his vision of national rejuvenation with all these obstacles?
Well, that's what's so fascinating about Xi Jinping. He's not shying away from these challenges. He seems even more determined to double down on his approach. Remember the 20th Party Congress in 2022?
Oh, yeah.
He secured an unprecedented third term as leader.
Right.
It shows his commitment to his long-term vision.
Right. And he laid out a clear roadmap for China's future.
He did.
He wants China to be a great modern socialist country by 2049.
Yeah, the 100th anniversary of the People's Republic.
Exactly.
He's not just talking about it. He's actively, reshaping China's political, economic, social landscape to make this vision a reality. I mean, he's consolidated power within the party, increased state control over the economy, even rewriting history.
It's a bold gamble.
It is.
It has massive implications
Oh, huge.
for China and the world.
Global implications.
If he pulls it off,
Yeah.
he'll go down in history as one of China's most transformative leaders.
Absolutely.
But if he stumble,
Yeah.
the consequences could be devastating.
And this is why understanding his ideology is so crucial.
Right.
It helps us decipher his motivations,
Okay.
anticipate his actions,
Right.
potentially avoid disastrous missteps
Yeah.
in our interactions with China.
So let's talk about those interactions. Can a liberal democratic West coexist peacefully with a China that's increasingly authoritarian and driven by a very different set of values?
That's the million-dollar question, and there's no easy answer. It requires a nuanced understanding of Xi Jinping's worldview, a willingness to engage with China on its own terms, and a clear-eyed assessment of both the opportunities and the risks involved.
It sounds like we're in for a bumpy ride.
I think so.
But we can't just ignore China, can we? It's
Well,
too big,
you're-
too influential.
You're absolutely right.
Mm-mm.
Engagement is essential, but it needs to be smart engagement.
Okay.
We need to understand China's goals,
Okay.
its strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
We also need to be clear about our own values
Right.
and interests.
So it's about finding a way to compete
Yes,
without falling into conflict.
exactly.
How do we do that when there's such a fundamental ideological divide?
It's a delicate balancing act. We need to be firm in defending our values and interests, but we also need to avoid unnecessary provocations. We need to be clear-eyed about the challenges China poses, but also open to areas of potential cooperation.
It's a tall order,
It is.
but it sounds like the stakes are incredibly high. What are some concrete examples of how Xi Jinping's ideology is playing out, in China's interactions with the rest of the world?
One striking example is how Xi Jinping utilizes, these specific phrases and slogans to signal policy shifts and ideological priorities. For instance, he's moved away from the Deng Xiaoping era guidance of keeping a low profile and embraced this concept of fenfa yue, meaning striving for achievement.
That's a noticeable change in rhetoric.
It
It
is.
definitely reflects a more confident and assertive China on the world stage.
Precisely. And this shift is more than just words. It's reflected in China's actions, from its military buildup in the South China Sea to its Belt and Road Initiative, which seeks to expand its global influence through these infrastructure projects.
So it's like China's rewriting the rules of the game.
In a way.
And they're not afraid to challenge the existing global order, are they?
You're absolutely right. Remember the phrase, a new type of great power relations. That's Xi Jinping essentially challenging the U.S.-led global order and advocating for a system that reflects China's interests.
That's certainly a bold move, and it's making a lot of countries nervous,
It is.
especially those who see China's rise as a potential threat
Of course.
to their own interests.
It's definitely a source of tension.
Right.
And it's driving a lot of the strategic competition we see playing out, between the U.S. and China, from trade disputes to technological rivalry.
So we have this assertive foreign policy backed by economic might and a clear ideological vision.
Yeah.
What about Xi Jinping's vision for this community of common destiny for mankind? Where does that fit into all of this?
That's a fascinating concept and one that's generated a lot of debate. On the surface, it sounds appealing, this idea of a world order based on shared interests and cooperation with China playing a leading role in promoting global harmony and prosperity.
It sounds almost utopian.
It does.
But I can imagine some people might be skeptical about China's motives.
You're spot on. Many see it as a clever attempt to reshape the world in China's image, advancing its interests under this guise of global unity. They point to China's human rights record and its increasingly authoritarian system as evidence that this vision for the future might not be so rosy for everyone.
It's a vision that has raised a lot of eyebrows in the West,
It has.
and it will continue to be debated and analyzed for years to come.
Absolutely. And this is why we need to be so careful in trying to understand Xi Jinping's ideology. His ideas are complex and multi-layered, and they can be interpreted in many different ways.
So how do we navigate this complex landscape?
Yeah.
How do we engage with a China that is simultaneously a partner, a competitor, and a potential rival?
It's a challenge that requires us to be both clear-eyed and pragmatic. We need to recognize that China is not going to simply conform to our expectations or our values. It is charting its own course, driven by a powerful leader with a deep-seated ideological vision.
So we need to understand that vision if we want to have any hope of managing this relationship effectively.
Precisely. And that understanding requires us to delve deeper, to go beyond the headlines and the rhetoric, and grapple with the complexities of Xi Jinping's thinking and its implications for the world.
This all sounds incredibly important, but also rather daunting. What are some key things we should keep in mind as we try to make sense of this new era of Chinese power and influence?
First and foremost, we need to remember that China is not a monolith. There are diverse viewpoints and perspectives within Chinese society, even within the party itself.
So we shouldn't assume that everyone in China agrees with Xi Jinping or that his ideology is universally embraced.
Exactly. It's crucial to avoid oversimplifying the situation or falling into stereotypical thinking.
What else should we keep in mind?
Another key point is that China's rise is not necessarily a zero-sum game. It's possible for China to achieve its goals without it coming at the expense of other countries.
So there's potential for win-win scenarios, even in areas where we might have disagreements or competing interests.
Absolutely, but achieving those win-win outcomes requires dialogue, understanding, and a willingness to compromise. It also requires us to be clear-eyed about our own strengths and weaknesses, and to avoid falling into the trap of either underestimating or exaggerating China's capabilities.
So it's about finding that delicate balance
It is.
between recognizing the challenges China poses
Yeah.
and being open to the possibilities for cooperation and mutual benefit.
Precisely. And that's where understanding Xi Jinping's ideology becomes so crucial. It's not about agreeing with his worldview, but about understanding it. It's about deciphering the code, so to speak, so that we can better anticipate China's actions and navigate this complex relationship in a way that serves our interests and promotes global stability.
So it's less about predicting the future and more about being prepared for a range of possibilities.
You got it, because the future is not predetermined. It's shaped by the choices we make today, the actions we take, and the way we choose to engage with this rising power.
It's a lot to think about, but this deep dive into Xi Jinping's thinking has given us a lot to chew on. What are some final takeaways for our listeners, who are trying to make sense of all this?
I think the most important takeaway is this Don't be afraid to engage with the complexities of China. Don't shy away from the difficult questions. And above all, don't underestimate the power of ideas to shape the course of history.
Yeah, it's a lot to process,
Yeah.
but thankfully we have, guides like Kevin Rudd
Yeah.
who are helping us navigate all this.
Right.
He's really made it his mission to unpack Xi Jinping's worldview,
He has.
and he argues that this understanding
Yeah.
is key to avoiding conflict.
He makes a very compelling case.
Yeah.
After
Yeah.
all miscalculations and misunderstandings
Right.
can lead to,
Yeah.
dangerous escalations, especially when dealing with powerful nations
Right.
with very different ideologies.
That's a sobering thought, but is it even possible
Right.
to bridge such a wide ideological gap?
Yeah.
Can a liberal democratic West
Yeah.
truly coexist peacefully with a China that embraces a more authoritarian model?
That's the challenge of our time, isn't it?
It really is.
Because Xi Jinping isn't just offering a different model of governance.
Right.
He's actively promoting it
Yeah.
as a superior alternative,
But
particularly in the developing world.
let's be honest.
Yeah.
The West hasn't exactly covered itself in glory
Right.
in recent years.
No.
A financial crisis, political polarization, the rise of populism.
Right.
It's given Xi Jinping plenty of ammunition
It has.
to critique the Western model.
Oh, he's been very effective at
Yeah.
using those weaknesses to his advantage,
Right.
presenting China's model of strong,
Yeah.
centralized leadership,
Right.
economic progress as a viable alternative.
So it's not just about military power
No.
or economic influence.
It's a battle of ideas.
It's a battle of ideas.
And the outcome of that battle
Yeah,
could have profound implications
absolutely.
for the future global order.
I mean, we're at a historical crossroads,
We are.
and the choices we make
Absolutely.
in the coming years
Yeah,
will have lasting consequences.
they will.
Will we manage this competition peacefully,
Big question.
or will we stumble into conflict?
Yeah, understanding Xi Jinping's ideology is just the first step.
So what else do we need to do to navigate this
Right.
complex
Yeah.
and rapidly changing world?
I think one of the most important things is to avoid
Yeah.
falling into this binary thinking.
Right.
It's not as simple as us versus them or democracy versus authoritarianism.
So we need to resist the temptation to oversimplify
We do.
and recognize the nuances and complexities.
Absolutely. We need to be willing to engage in these difficult conversations, to challenge our own assumptions, and to seek common ground, where possible.
It sounds like a tall order,
It is.
but it also sounds incredibly important.
It is.
Where can our listeners go
Well,
to learn more about these issues and deepen their understanding?
Kevin Rudd's work is an excellent starting point.
Yeah.
His book, The Avoidable War,
Right.
and his doctoral thesis offer deep insights
Okay.
into Xi Jinping's thinking
Yeah.
and the challenges of managing relations with China.
I've heard great things about his work.
Me too.
It's definitely on my reading list.
Good.
Any other recommendations?
There are many other resources out there.
Okay.
From academic journals to think tank reports.
Right.
To news articles and podcasts.
Right.
The key is to be discerning,
Right.
to seek out diverse perspectives,
Yeah.
and to be critical
Right.
of the information you consume.
So it's all about staying informed,
Yeah.
engaging with the issues,
Yeah.
being willing to learn
Absolutely.
and adapt as the situation evolves.
Yeah, this deep dive has definitely given me a lot to think about.
Me too. And I hope it's encouraged our listeners to do the same, because the future of China and its relationship with the rest of the world, it affects us all. Absolutely. So to wrap things up, if you want to understand where China is heading
Yeah.
and how it will impact your world, I highly recommend, digging into Kevin Rudd's work,
Yeah.
exploring the many other resources available.
Yes. And as always,
Yes,
stay curious, stay informed,
absolutely.
and keep those critical thinking skills sharp.
Yeah, because in a world of competing narratives and rapidly shifting power dynamics, the ability to think for yourself is more important than ever.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thanks for joining us today.
It's been a pleasure.